it is a pleasure to welcome you to this panel, Designing for Collaboration, Participation, and Futures Inspired by Art. My name is Ai Hisano from the University of Tokyo, Japan, and I'm honored to serve as the moderator for this session on design and AI. So when we talk about AI today, the conversation is often framed in terms of performance, scale, or regulation, how powerful systems are, how quickly they evolve, and how we might regulate risks. And these questions are, of course, important and essential, but not sufficient. AI systems do not simply operate or exist in the abstract, but they shape and are shaped by our everyday environments, institutions, and cultural imaginaries. So this is where design becomes crucial. And design, what we discuss here, is not just about aesthetics or interfaces. It includes how systems are restructured, how values are embedded, and how responsibilities are distributed. And I think design also has a unique capacity to make abstract themes or abstract issues, such as ethics and governance, tangible and debatable. And our session will address the potential of design in thinking and also reframing AI issues today from perspectives from science, governance, and cultural institutions and education. Now, let me quickly introduce my fellow panelists. To my left, Sharon Prince, the CEO of Grace Farms Foundation, and Professor Miles Pennington, the Prospective Dean of the College of Design at the University of Tokyo, which will be a newly established college in 2027. And Professor Primavera di Filippi, she's a research director at CNRS and also faculty associate at Harvard University. And Professor Teruo Fujii, the president of the University of Tokyo, Japan. Now, I will begin by inviting each panelist to reflect on design and AI from their own standpoint, and then we will move on to a moderated discussion. Now, so to everyone, from your perspective, how could design help shape AI in ways that foster collaboration, participation, and long-term social imagination? So maybe start with Tori. Okay. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Hello, everyone. It's wonderful to be back here, and it is in fact third year in a row for organizing this AI house. And so the answer to your question, or like how design could contribute to the next generation, future AI, would be so my thought is basically for now, the AI itself, all these generative AI, are becoming so huge in a way to make this, as a hardware infrastructure itself, and also system itself is huge. So that the only maybe a few or several, organizations could handle that to make a kind of huge scale foundation model itself. So that makes us sort of worry that if we think about design, because design is the way to think about how all these users and or citizens or all these people would like to have those functionality of the new system and a new methodology or new tool, so that how we could comply with this kind of need is a kind of very crucial point for the as a kind of function or the role of the design itself. And in that sense, I think the university should take a lead or should take the role for such kind of the need from all of the users, and we have very many students who wants to use that, right? So that out of this kind of bottom-up approach, how we could deal with this issue is very important for now. So that and then of course the university is a place where it is a kind of neutral in any ways. So.
Okay, thank you. I want to follow up on your question later, maybe about the role of universities as well. So thank you so much. Primavera, you are yourself is a designer as well, and have created a very interesting design of formula tool for designers and creators. So would you share your experience and also your view on design and AI?
So I'm both a researcher and an artist. And of course, I'm very interested in emergent technology. So as soon as generative AI became available, I started experimenting with it. And I've also noticed there's something very interesting with artists experimenting with those new technologies, is that they are actually oftentimes pushing the boundaries to places in which perhaps it doesn't yet make sense for entrepreneurs to step into, because the technology is not ready yet, right? But as an artist, you have the opportunity of doing things before it's fully scalable, functional, before there is a return on investment and so forth. So there is, I would say, like many of the pioneers, the people that are really exploring the boundaries and pushing the boundaries of the technology are oftentimes the artists that are exploring this new space. And so myself, as part of this artist collective of tech-oriented artists, we've been playing a lot with generative AI, and I think what's interesting is that then my experimentation with generative AI also as a user and as an artist informed a lot of insights as to what a proper design for those platforms could be, and this then therefore informed my decision to also build platforms for artists to be able to leverage this technology, especially because beyond the pioneering artists that are actually very happy to explore with this technology, there is of course a lot of reluctance or even fear about is generative AI going to replace the work of artists? And so I created this platform which is called alias.studio, which is specifically about empowering artists to train their own model in order to then be able to have full control over the way in which their works are being instantiated through the model, and also the ability potentially to monetize by making those models available to authors.
Yeah.
And all this was all the design of these platforms was actually informed by looking at how artists early on are pioneering the use of this technology and what are their needs that emerge from that.
Yeah, thank you. It's really interesting, and I think it's important to develop this kind of structure that are equitable, inclusive, and also economically sustainable as well. So thank you so much. Okay, so Miles, you do teach kind of design-related courses as well, so your kind of experience in teaching and also...
Very true. So yeah, maybe to introduce myself a little bit and build on what Teruo said about universities taking a responsibility for the future of AI systems. We're creating a new College of Design at the University of Tokyo that's hopefully taking design into a relatively new space. So design, I think, is an incredible, and I am biased, of course, the incredible discipline for turning understanding into ideas and then ideas into deployable innovations. But perhaps conventionally, design focuses on the disciplines of design, so product or graphics, communications, and so on. What we're trying to do is to expand the remit of design to tackle social issues and challenges around the world. And how technology is used is one of them. So how we're going to do that is to create a design program. We're going to borrow from design schools because there's some amazing things around education and mindset that design schools bring to the world, I think. But the really unique part is unlocking the rest of the university's knowledge. So from engineering, humanities, law, medicine, social sciences, and so on, our design students will be able to study across all of those disciplines. And the goal is to get people to look at challenges from different perspectives, right? So whatever social issue or challenge you look at, coming at it from many different perspectives allows you to have a broader view on that problem. And we organize these, of course, that's an enormous range of disciplines, but we're organizing them into certain domains. And one, of course, is around technology frontiers and AI. And I think it's quite unique for design students to tackle AI systems because technically it's quite challenging. You need a lot of coding and maybe perhaps even deeper algorithmic understanding. But at the same time, we want our students to be driven by the need to make things tangible. And that's one of the great aspects, I think, of a design education, that design students are always driven to create ideas and put it into people's hands. Traditionally, that's been a lot of products or services, but moving recently into policies and systems and community ideas. Now I think it's time for design to take a responsibility for guiding AI in a more equitable and responsible way, but actually being also involved in the technical development, not just judgment and critique. So we're trying to create this new college under, the vision of it is Teruo's vision for the kind of future, introducing a new future of design into the university. And yeah, maybe we can talk a little bit more about that
Yes.
later.
Thank you very much. And Sharon, you have a very unique standpoint and perspective, and I'm really interested in your work at the Grace Farm Foundation, which kind of integrates art, architecture, and ethical issues and engagement with the public. So would you give us your insight? Yeah.
And hello, it's really terrific to be on this panel with all of you because there's a commonality. Grace Farms Foundation, it created a place. It's called Grace Farms in Connecticut. And it was based on the idea that space communicates. It's a new typology. And what we did as a public place is embed values into space. And so the architect who could do that in terms of design, the only one on the planet really is Sana, based out of their studios in Tokyo. And because they're not tethered to existing models. However, the interesting thing is that we're the analog to the digital space. And I'll explain how we use AI too. But in terms of analog, we only used models. I never saw a rendering for 2 years in terms of creating what is called a river building. It's 5 transparent volumes, and it serves a number of purposes. But I can tell you that we only use physical models. There's something about creating, understanding the emotional power of space that AI has yet to do. So I'm going to let you know from this platform. It's a generative platform, a different kind than you think of AI. I used generative before AI, so I'm doing this for about 18 years now. But it is to create new outcomes, create a platform that creates new outcomes. And what we did is something AI did not do. We created, it's called Design for Freedom Movement, to remove forced and child labor from the building materials supply chain that's been given a labor transparency pass. AI did not unearth that. And the only reason why I did is because the proximities that are created at Grace Farms is between nature, arts, justice, community, and faith in terms of human flourishing too. And so, and having a common denominator, a place. So the Design for Freedom movement, I launched it only after I built it. Makes sense, right? Because those proximities didn't happen. And it was launched formally in 2020 from within the industry. I gathered it used the same proximate idea of having multi-valiant space, same with the leaders of industry. So it's within the ACE industry, it's construction lawyers, nonprofit. So it's, Assa Abloy to Saint-Gobain now, and big and, engineering firms. So it's very exciting because we're able to do that. Now how AI works. So in the last 2 years, the expectation is that it's going to be highly intelligent. It is, but it's less human than expected. And so we're adding human dignity into the supply chain, and you can do that with AI. So I'll talk a little later about, I take this up, there's the software, and then there's the hardware. And so what has not been talked about is the AI data centers that are being built with that labor transparency pass at a scale that is unimaginable. 2/3 of the US GDP is on AI development. The scale is astonishing. I have stats in my phone I can tell you later, but I mean, it really is. And I can tell you how they're made and how they're getting, do we know? They say they're sustainable, but this same thing with the green building movement. The green building movement did not acknowledge ethical, whether we're made with fair, all the building materials are made fairly, and they're not. And 50% of all the extracted materials go into our buildings. So there's a lot to unpack there. And then the safe software side, AI is helping to create transparency in a very opaque supply chain. And I can tell you how we're doing that too.
Okay, thank you. I think your kind of project touch on not only labor, but also environmental issues and some other social issues that AI has brought.
There's a lot there.
Yeah, thank you. Well, you already kind of brought up, but I have questions for Teruo and Sharon about as a leader of institution, university, and foundation. So in thinking about the long-term social impact of AI, what responsibilities do universities cultural institutions and maybe corporations have been cultivating ethical design practices that go beyond the efficiency or performance. So
You mean the
maybe,
thought-
yeah,
yep.
go.
Okay, so I do work with universities. About 50 I think are so important because they're creating the new means and methods. So we need to add in value-based thinking, right, into new means and methods. And so design for freedom is the university sector is a priority. I've had my first Design for Freedom lecture among many in Tokyo at the AI House. I mean, the I House, which I'm
House,
also
yeah.
part. Yeah, I House. Sorry, not AI House. The I House, which was really exciting to be able to do because it was the first time it was translated into another language. We also have our toolkit, international toolkit, translated into Vietnamese now. But the exciting thing about that is that we have a competition. 300 students in the U.S. and abroad competed in a Design for Freedom material research and design competition in 2004-05, and we're going to do it again on a biannual basis. And so it was great is that the one who won on the material research side had heard, there was the professor from USC who heard that lecture. So that was pretty cool to see. So what happens is that Stanford PhD student is taking his entire PhD to look at the labor fingerprint in concrete. You take a piece of concrete, where does it come from? You don't know. And we identified in our toolkit 12 at-risk materials that are the highest. And so anyway, they're very important in terms of research. I asked the question, so what people ask quite often is, it sustainable? It costs more. Now, you're going to ask me to make sure it's made with fair labor? Okay, how much is that going to cost? And that is a sort of inane question, but I reverse it to say, instead, are you willing to accept the slavery discount? Because that's what it is until you can tell me it's made with fair labor. And so I'm asking universities to help me, and you out in the audience, you that can think about it, how can you determine what that slavery discount is when there's thousands of materials that go into our buildings? So one way is that I had a student, Vardhan Mehta, who was a student and an engineer from MIT. Both were at Grace Farms about 4 years ago, and he was developing something called ACE Lab, and he said he would add in a Design for Freedom filter. It took him that long, and he did it. And so now there's 150,000 manufacturers that are using it, 8,000 manufacturers, 150,000 products, and there's a filter. This is as good as it's going to get right now, but I'd like to see more. So adding in the principles so you can determine, based on our 3 principles, which does include circularity because you're truncating the supply chain at the extractives. And I use the term ethical decarbonization because we can't decarbonize without it being ethically sourced, or it's not sustainable, not in the back. So once you build something, it's built, and that fingerprint of labor is in your building. So the AI capacity is tremendous, and so I think universities, we're a cultural and we're not a university, but we love universities, but a cultural and humanitarian combination. And as a convener, we can start to evoke curiosity about these issues and convene.
Yeah, thank you very much. Teruo, do you?
Yes.
Yes.
Right. So it's nice to know about this collaboration with your collaboration with.
I'm coming
university.
back in another couple of
Right.
months, so.
But yes, as I have said, university as a neutral entity, so we definitively, need to point out all these issues that is, that we need to foresee, given this situation around AI. And as I have said, it's a kind of huge system that we need to deal with. So the first one is, as Primavera said, so there are some couple of, small systems that has to be, harnessed into the big one. And then that is also very important part of the new, technology development that we need to see. Yeah, because for now, especially, for example, if you take, for example, Japanese system, Japanese generative AI, but then how we could basically harness that with English-based AI, generative AI. And then there are so many different, languages around the world. And even there are some languages which has no written form, for example. So that if you think about all of these things of the kind of diversity of the language itself, so we need to think about how to deal with these points, because language itself is very much tightly coupled with the culture itself. So that this, I mean, if you think about the kind of huge scale autonomous so-called general intelligence, that would be, so how it will look like. So then, so we want to see all these, AI models, but that has its own kind of individual characteristics. So that this, harnessing this individuality or diversity to this huge foundation model is one of the very important issues that we need to tackle on. And another thing is, as you said, it's a sustainability issue. And it's not only for this labor, supply, but also for the electricity supply, energy supply itself is, I guess, hitting the kind of the limit sooner or later. So then, so we need to prepare for that. So then this, in this area, there's the place where this new technology could come in. So then we also, for example, as we are looking at, for example, some molecules or biological stuff to be able to do some computing tasks. And this is a completely new area, but we also need to think about this kind of futuristic or future, computing, method as research institutions. And in any case, we need to develop the new talent for, tackling all of these issues. And so for that, we, as Miles said, so we are establishing a new college, which is called the U Tokyo College of Design, to educate a new talent, young talent, to become able to design the future society itself.
Okay, thank you. Well, I want to talk a little bit about this kind of nurturing new talents and asking questions to Miles and Primavera about kind of shifting a little bit, shifting the conversation a little bit more about talents and agents who are involved in the design and AI. So not only in the development of AI, but also in academia and in many fields, we often hear the importance of interdisciplinary collaboration, cross-disciplinary collaborations. But it is quite difficult or challenging. So my question is, what do we gain, and also what tensions emerge when engineers, designers, social scientists, and artists collaborate in shaping AI systems or design AI?
So as a researcher, I'm focusing specifically on those technologies, so AI and blockchain, and but I come from like a social science, so like governance and law. So I'm kind of very used of having to manage those conversations between engineers and social scientists, which is, there are tensions because I will say the language is very different, and especially the mindset more so than the language is quite different. But when we actually manage to make them speak to each other, there is like incredible synergies that can emerge. There's this very beautiful sentence that, so I organize those residency which are actually bringing together artists, engineers, philosophers, social scientists, etc., for like 2 weeks, and really getting them to speak and to collaborate and to discover things that perhaps they could not have imagined, because you need an artistic or a designer mindset to think outside of the box and then inspire engineers to then try and achieve that which the artist has dreamt, and vice versa. An artist that doesn't fully understand the depth of the technology might not even think about some things because they don't know what's possible. Yeah. And so by bringing those people together, all of a sudden, the horizon of possibilities on both sides actually expands. There's this very beautiful sentence that one artist has actually mentioned, which says, through the collaboration with engineers, they have discovered that, like, for an engineer, once something starts working, it's finished. The work is done because it works. For an artist, once it starts working, that's when the work begins, right? And so the engineers, they are just focusing on functionality, whereas the artists need the functionality in order to build upon. And so from my experience, I think that this is like, even though there is a little bit of a barrier of getting people to really understand the value on speaking to each other, the collaborative output that comes when they decide to work together is actually like much further than if individually they were trying to achieve something. So I think like the cross-pollination and the interdisciplinarity, especially in fields like AI, in which the functionality is really just one very small piece of the picture, but then there is all the question about ethics, about equitability, about governance, and all those things. Those are things that an engineering mindset might actually not focus on immediately, but by bringing this cross-pollination with artist, designer, or even just like social scientists more generally, then all of a sudden the design needs to embed those prerogatives as well. And so it's actually improving as well the functionality of the system.
Thank you. Miles, do you?
I think you answered that question beautifully, because maybe to build on it, so what we're trying to do is perhaps build a platform to make exactly that kind of collaboration happen. So coming back to the new college, the idea is to tap into disciplines from across the university and to bring those and mix those experts from engineering or medicine or law or social sciences in with the students. So they're all working together on challenges like new AI systems. And I think AI systems is really crucial, not only because of the amazing impact it will have, but also it's a difficult and slightly ambiguous or invisible technology. You know, it's very much black box. So getting new talent involved in the development of it, but also thinking really broadly across many different perspectives, looking at the challenge from many different perspectives, allows us to frame the problem much better and to discuss many more ideas on how we develop things. So each one of those disciplines has a different objective. You know, engineering, and maybe, they want to make it work. Artists want to critique it. Social scientists want to understand the context more. Designers maybe want to make an amazing experience. So having all of that in one mix makes a very strong argument. And I think there is tension, but I like to use the word friction better, because from a physics perspective, like, you need friction for the world to work, right? If your shoes slip all the time, you don't move forward. So I think friction is good, not in the way of not getting on, but friction to move forward. And you only move forward if you can really discuss things from a 360-degree view. And I think that's what this kind of collaborative, multidisciplinary approach, I think, brings. And I think design is at the heart of it, not because it's the most special, but design is good at bringing things to life, making artifacts, making prototypes, making visuals, not to show off, but allow people to look at something concrete and say, I disagree with this, or I agree with that, you know, and allow the conversation to move forward at a faster pace. So yeah, I love the collaborative environment. The more of it happens, the better. I think actually institutions themselves are something that we need to break. They're very siloed, so kind of creating a broader mix inside, particularly universities and other big organizations, is
Right.
good.
That's very
Possible.
important.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, building on that, maybe I want to go back to the kind of the role of university to ask question to Miles and Teruo. And building on this kind of discussion about cross-disciplinary collaboration. So university stands in a unique, I think, a place in society, education, also, but also research institutions, and collaborate with companies and many other different institutions. So what role should universities play as mediators between technical expertise in the case of AI and social values?
Well, yes. So now it's, given this discussion here, now it's getting more and more important for the university to become open to the society. And so before it was like university is the place where students are studying, and then after their completion they're getting some jobs afterwards. And so there was like a kind of very, the clear line drawn in between. But now it's more and more, I mean, so coming into the, from the both side into the both areas, so that universities should also have a kind of place where all these people from kind of professionals coming in to do something together with the students or professors, and then the vice versa. So that like this way, so I definitely see the need or demand, very strong demand from a society as a whole, that universities should become more open to the society, to the outside world.
Thank you.
Right.
Mars?
Yeah, maybe that's a really good point, because maybe the really big challenge is, like, do we need universities at all with the emergence of AI? You know, like half the
Like, take
students,
that.
the students are like, I don't need to learn this anymore, because, you know, with 15 seconds of research on my computer, I can download everything you're trying to teach me in this lecture. But I think, and I don't have a magic answer for this yet, but I think the bit that AI can't do, is coming to your point, is
Right.
like the human side of things. You know, it can't dig up
Creating
everything.
epiphanies. They're not. It's not creating epiphanies, and it's actually the AI model is correlations, and it's re-evaluating that every single time. It doesn't have the. I mean, the machine learning is a little nascent still. You're not. It cannot create the outcome that I was describing. Design for freedom. It didn't do that. It had an opportunity, and so did students. So did all of it. So you need to have the proximities.
Right.
Where there's a human element, and that's yet to be determined, right? If that will, if the machine learning will be compounding experientially, it hasn't yet.
So that means that the students should have some more, I mean, experience in the actual, I mean, side, practical situation, so that they could see this, I mean, human taste
Right.
of the outcomes that they need to evaluate,
So
or they need
getting
to
students
criticize.
out of the university is also
Right, yeah.
beneficial, right?
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
But, and also for Design for Freedom, we're taking the full ecosystem of the built environment all together, which we haven't seen at universities yet. It's not still the role, but for us, because the movement's coming from within the industry versus being pressed upon it, there are laws around the world that that prohibit forced labor and, you know, material supply chains, but yet it takes everybody's pressure points. So it's manufacturers. So I mean, you still are probably working with manufacturers, but we have construction lawyers, and I mean the full. I see it in some senses, like some parts of it, but to have 8 different. We describe it like 8 different ones in the ecosystem. In conversation together is important. In terms of AI, I can tell you that we also have identified 17 different AI platforms that you can use along the design process at different intervals, so that their AI tools are out there to use along the way for both ethically sourcing and sustainably designing at the same time. So those all come into play, but to aggregate those, then that would be the next step.
Yeah.
If I can add something to
Yeah.
Mike's comment, I think that this generation, as a broad term, this is a very crucial point, I think, in history, because we are pretty much perhaps the last generation that has the opportunity of training those AI systems that will then train the future generations. And this creates like incredible opportunity, but also responsibility of like, how do we actually properly design the systems with our own value systems, because most likely eventually those people will be trained by the AI, like the education. I don't think universities will become obsolete, but they will clearly integrate AI in a lot of the teaching. And so today, I think even more than ever, the design of the systems, because the systems become then, will replicate whatever they have been trained into in order to train the next generation, becomes like the most fundamental challenge.
Yeah. Would you? So you have worked on blockchain and governance and art design. So would you elaborate a little bit more on kind of if there's any limits of regulatory approaches without design intervention? If we don't think about the importance of design, what's the limits of the governance?
I would say like it's a general problem that the law encounter when dealing with emergent technologies, which is emergent technologies enable new usages which are not yet encompassed by the law because they didn't exist before. And so there is always this tension between like regulation as a way of like constraining or regulating existing practice, but also without precluding innovation, but also making sure that the innovation is also properly regulated. And I think the challenge with regard to AI is explicitly like, usually the law is kind of like defining the boundaries in which things can operate. But with AI, because it's this kind of like evolving and adaptable thing, the challenge of design is enabling to explore the space of possibilities that then will have to be regulated. But if we only assign to existing regulators or even legislators the role of actually setting up the boundaries, then it might actually be too constrictive, right? And so the role, I will say, of design is to think outside of the box and explore and push the boundaries of what are the practices that are done today and what are the practices that will be done tomorrow. And through this kind of like design thinking, then also propose possible ways in which the technology itself can also be, through the design of the technology, specific things that usually would require legal intervention can potentially be embedded into the technology. And blockchain is a very good example in which like a lot of formalities that are usually required for transparency and accountability, like auditing, reporting system, all of students can be codified directly into the technology. And so with AI, I think it's the same question, is like, can we design AI system which, because of the way in which they have been produced and integrated, you are already embedding legal or policy objectives directly into the design of the technology, so that the law is only there to sanction if something goes wrong, but is not there to ex ante dictate what is possible and what is not possible, but letting the technology actually embed those principles.
Thank you, thank you. So, well, my next question is to everyone. So reflecting on our conversation today, what kind of principles or practices do you think should guide the design of AI futures, inspired by art, collaboration, and participation, which is the kind of the theme of this panel? So Sharon, would you start with that?
Okay, you might already expect that I would like to see in the future both the software and the hardware itself of AI be ethically sourced. So if you haven't talked about ethical AI, it needs to start from the data centers that to ensure, because of the massive amount of energy and the building structure, infrastructure at hyperscale, as yet to, a lot of it has actually been working on net zero, but again, not identifying whether or not these amount of materials have been sourced fairly. To me, that's fundamental. And then, because of the impact to humanity, there's 28 million in forced labor conditions. And so, and the use, and also for data centers, it's using mass amount of steel, concrete, and all the rare earth too, but materials. But then also in software, to be able to use the good news is that AI can be able to really help to create transparency in what is a very, very opaque supply chain for the architectural field.
Could you
and art
elaborate-
too, because using materials for art as well.
Could you talk a little bit more specifically about the software part, or like what kind of systems are you?
So the one example was Ace Lab that is creating a platform that's basically to create a highway between the architects and the suppliers. And so just to determine all the specifications that take hours and hours. So this is a great way to try. I'm an investor in an Ace Lab, I should say that, and also an investor in another Jesus is another one for nanotechnology to cool the systems for data centers, because you see that coming. But the reason for that is that it's creating a highway. You want that highway to also, now you can have a filter in there for design for freedom principles to see which specifications of products abide by design for freedom principles. Fair labor certifications, use of circularity, those kinds of criteria. So it's very helpful. It's the beginning. That's one example of hopefully many to come. And there's other AI applications that are starting to use that, implement that, because we're working with different platforms. Yeah, so it's promising on one end, and then in terms of the hardware, bleak right now.
Thank you.
So,
Miles?
So maybe, I'm just thinking on the comments from the previous conversation about we're at a critical point. The next generation should be in charge of this technology. So of course, I'm biased. I want to see that happen in a university. I'd love to see a more of a design approach, so bringing different disciplines into this conversation so that we can make all the mistakes early in a design project. Design is such a great, what's the word? It's used to uncertainty. You make something, you test it, you make it again. That's all part of design. So getting people to design, they don't have to be from design background, but getting all the things right and getting a proper technology development done early by the generation that's essentially going to carry it forward in their lives, I think is super crucial, So whether that's inside a university or an innovative new type of a university or not in a university, that's to be decided.
Thank you. Primavera, you already talked about kind of the future, but would you talk a little bit more about, what you think about?
Yeah. I think for me, like the crucial aspect is, I don't want to say the word interpretability because I think it's too narrow, but it's like, it's basically being able to ensure what gets trained inside the systems, in the sense that we have like large operators that are training the AI, and there is a lot of control, and we're going increasingly into a space in which the question is no longer the bias because of the training data. It's more like what those operators might want to inject into the AI. And all of a sudden, just by talking with an AI agent, you might actually acquire information which you don't know if they are just like the statistically significant information or if they are like information that has been intentionally prioritized and so forth. So there is like, I think in terms of ethics, instead of transparency, there is like a very, very important role. And I think regulation needs to jump into that, but it's also not clear how. And I think, again, like an ethical and like an experiencing with the system and exploring multiple ways in which you can find ways in which you fully understand like where is the information coming from, and who are the actors that are dictating the information that comes from. So I think that's one thing. And then the other one I will say is that we reach a point in which those AI systems, whether like image, LLMs, etc., they are pretty much like collected all the available data on the internet, which also leads to this kind of like a prioritization of the statistically significant information, which unfortunately, when we look at the information on the internet, is maybe not always the most interesting or the most specialized or qualified. And so I think we also need to design a system by which we can create external data spaces which the AI can plug into without necessarily ingesting it, because by ingesting more data, it's just going to be diluted and again falling into the statistical insignificance of the rare data. And so creating a system in which people and humans continue to produce novel information, specialized and qualified information, which is actually held as a separate, in a separate cluster, in like a data trust, and actually getting AI to query those spaces in order to acquire this qualified information, which might already be part of the training data, but it's so hard to find because it's diluted within all the rest of the information. So I think if we want to improve those AI systems nowadays, it's not just about feeding them more data, but it's actually about creating collections of qualified data that exist outside of the systems that become potentially available, but also can be made available under a particular compensation system, so that there is still an incentive for people and artists and creators to make content, because that content is actually gonna be qualified content that AI services are willing to pay for in order to increase the quality of the product that they're providing.
Yeah, thank you. So it's kind of a human part, like as Sharon said, human part of AI, right? So Teruo,
Well, so yes, listen to these conversations. So at all, so it's kind of, so we need to go in between the human thing and also all these kind of performance type of measures. And, but then if you think about this art, for example, so art is somewhat, so we based on the idea that everyone's looking at or feeling or drawing things in a different way, right? So it's not the kind of single, converging solution. So for everyone, so it's everyone's different, right? So that so the design could be one of the very strong tool to make a kind of future like a form of the certain, for example, like a service or whatever, where the AI will be used, and by making such kind of structure by design, then we could start some discussion from that point. So then this discussion is somewhat, maybe it's in the objective of the regulatory purposes, or like some ethical discussions around, but in any case, we need to have some tangible representation in front of us to start discussion, right? So that to make such kind of representation, also design could be a kind of very, powerful like expertise. So that's what I thought from your conversation.
Yeah, and the College of Design can nurture
such
that
role.
talent. Yes,
Right.
thank you.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. So we would like to take questions and comments from the floor. Okay, so back in the ground. Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Thank you so much. This has been fascinating. We heard a compelling and I would say welcome set of comments about why we need humanity coupled with technology in order to produce innovation. And yet my work on what I call smarter collaboration consistently shows that humans don't like, Miles, what you talked about with friction. So I would love to hear how you, as leaders and pioneers in your field, embrace the sort of friction that comes from interacting with people across disciplines or with, sort of complementary or antagonistic views. What do you do to make the most of that?
So maybe I'll begin. So I think I have the luxury of working inside a university and inside design department. So everything about the department is about breaking down boundaries and creativity, having fun, and thinking of new things. So I'm very lucky that the friction can be like without heat, so to speak, in the human sense. People come there because of they want to collaborate. So there's a gravity to pull people together, and I think that's a luxury for me, because I don't have to try to make awkward parts of an organization work. And I can't answer that one. It's because I haven't achieved it. But perhaps taking the spirit of design and creativity, whether that's a company's creativity or a university, maybe that environment is incredibly important. Giving people permission to say what they want and not be constantly judged and feel they're going to be fired and these sorts of things. So, that's as much of a hint as I can go. And I know it's difficult to transplant that that effect into more structured organizations.
I'm at Harvard Law School. I'll tell you, not every university embraces what you just said.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, and also, well, at Grace Farms too, we're a neutral place, and with a sense of optimism and hope in there. But everybody's voluntarily collaborating as well. So I think that makes for a really good mix. And the invitation is one that's hard to deny when you're, really to deny. Okay, I don't care about modern slavery or forced labor. No, that doesn't usually happen. But I'm also working with leaders. So the Design Freedom Working Group we have now is about 100, and they're all leaders within their industry. And so the ask is to use their own agency. So rather than having any one party be responsible and have that friction, I mean, it's not that the friction is at the cost, because the construction sector is driven by cost and the magnitude and scale of it. So that's where I wrestled with it a lot until I got to the slavery discount. Then people also started to understand, oh, wait a minute, it's not this going to cost me more, because that's where it really was the rub. And so now this is where people start to understand, no, I don't want to accept the slavery discount. So it's a combination.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if I can add to this, I think like to my experience and my experience with working both with artists and publishers and editors, is actually like the friction is mostly caused by fear because there is clearly a disruption coming, and like artists perhaps have been the first one to notice, but also publishers, because all of a sudden there is the question of like, is anyone ever gonna buy an article and read an article as opposed to chatting with a chatbot? And so my experience is actually like this friction is driven by fear, but also the friction is also a signal that it can be converted into an opportunity. And both in case of artists and publisher, and I think many more, the opportunity is basically how do we convert a technology that is currently perceived as potentially taking out their jobs into an actual new revenue flow, right? And I think it's similar if we make the analogy. There was a lot of friction in the early days of the internet with like piracy everywhere and the creative industry like freaking out. And then all of a sudden what happened, beyond the legal reforms which tried to actually block, the actual innovation was a commercial opportunity, which is streaming, right? And all of a sudden the internet became a fantastic opportunity for providing new ways of consuming content, which the creative industry have immediately jumped into, right? And so I think today with AI is very similar. Either there is like frictional opposition because we're afraid and we want to keep the old business model, or slowly, and I think it's kind of like the early pioneer that can see these opportunities, like actually what would it look like to operate within this new model, and what are the new revenue flows that can emerge, because all of a sudden we're providing streaming to the AI, right? And artists are starting now to create their own models and getting like passive revenues for people that are using their models. Publishers are starting to create like clusters of like data cluster that they are making AI pay to access, and so they can actually monetize their content, both in the traditional way by selling papers, or in the novel way by actually selling access to the data to AI, right? So I think like the friction is usually, to me, a very positive signal that a new opportunity is coming, and if we can not be afraid of the disruption, but actually embrace them, then the friction actually becomes a commercial opportunity.
To make it short, it's I mean, friction is where the dialogue is coming in. So you know, this web meeting is the topic. The theme is dialogue, and in fact, so what I mean by dialogue is having different types of discussions. But you yourself need to also will make some changes, right, by yourself. So that by having this kind of friction and dialogue, so people can change themselves. So that they could basically see for example, the positive part of this AI or whatever. So, yeah. So then, in fact, in my leadership, our motto in our university is creating the future through dialogue. So that is what we are promoting. So. So.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm so sorry. We have to. We are running out of the time, and we have to cut the. I'm sorry. We will come back to the room, so hopefully you can continue the conversation. Thank you so much for your interesting insights, and I think this panel has shown design is not just about solving problems, but also about framing and reframing AI. So thank you so much.
Thank you.